Nearly 4 decades after the Revolutionary War, the Missouri Compromise of 1820 marked an important discussion in the struggle over slavery, as it debated if Missouri were to be a slave state or a free state. During these few months, Senator Henry Clay, given the nickname the Great Compromiser, delivered a series of speeches calling for unity between the North and the South. Henry Clay's speeches stressed the necessity for compromise to prevent the Union from falling apart. As he put it in the U.S. Senate, I consider it my duty to maintain the union of these states and to preserve peace and harmony between the sections. Clay urged both sides to meet in the middle, letting Missouri join as a slave state while having Maine be a free state. This kept the balance between the North and the South, though it was only a temporary solution. In 1850, coming off the aftermath of the Mexican-American War, the issue of slavery was hot once again. Was slavery allowed in the new territories? Henry Clay once again emerged to address this problem with the Compromise of 1850. In a speech to the Senate, Clay famously said, "I protest, in the name of liberty, against the further extension of slavery." This led to many measures being done, such as California being added as a free state in 1850 and the enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act. Clay's speech was still only a temporary solution to the ongoing problem. Meanwhile, Senator Daniel Webster of Massachusetts gave his famous 7th of March speech to the U.S. Senate, urging Northerners to support the Compromise of 1850. His famous opening statement was, "I wish to speak today, not as a Massachusetts man, nor as a Northern man, but as an American." Daniel's words emphasized the unity as one nation. Jumping to November 19th, 1863 in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the American Civil War was raging on. This is when President Abraham Lincoln delivered what would become one of the most famous speeches in American history, the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proclamation that all men are created equal. Lincoln's brief address only consisted of 272 words, yet it reframed the purpose of the Civil War, declaring that they weren't fighting just to preserve the Union, but also to ensure a new birth of freedom, with liberty and equality for all. Lincoln emphasized that America's survival depended on the principles of democracy and human equality. Before the Civil War had started, Abraham Lincoln delivered a speech during his campaign against Stephen A. Douglas on June 16, 1858 at Springfield, Illinois. In the most famous speech, House Divided, Lincoln proclaimed, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Lincoln's words were clear. The United States of America could not last while being divided on slavery. Lincoln's call for an end to slavery emerged him as the victor and as the new president. Back to 1863, on January 1st at Washington, D.C., Lincoln announces the Emancipation Proclamation. He declared that on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforth, and forever free. It stated that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territories are now free, as well as acknowledging the morals of slavery.
From the 1840s to the 1870s, Frederick Douglass, a former slave, became one of the most influential advocates for putting an end to slavery. His advocacy was a strong driving force in the fight for freedom and equality for all African Americans. On July 5, 1852, at Rochester, New York, Frederick Douglass delivered his speech. What to the Slave is the 4th of July. In it, Douglas boldly asked, "What, to the American slave, is your 4th of July?" I answer, "A day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim." Douglas had caught out the hypocrisy of the United States. How could a nation celebrate freedom while enslaving millions? In 1859, John Brown, a radical abolitionist who sought to incite a slave rebellion, led a raid on an arsenal in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. After being captured by federal troops, Brown was put on trial for treason and gave a speech explaining his actions. "I am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but with blood." Brown's powerful words sent shockwaves throughout the nation, with many viewing him as a martyr for the abolitionist cause, someone willing to sacrifice their life to fight against the injustice that is slavery. Not all speeches were in favor of freedom for slaves. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, delivered by Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, declared that a black man has no rights which the white man is bound to respect. This dealt a huge blow to black rights. Chief Taney's opinion stated that African Americans, free or enslaved, are not U.S. citizens, as well that Congress could not limit slavery in U.S. territories. His decision outraged abolitionists, causing more conflict between pro-slavers and anti-slavers. Following Abraham Lincoln's presidential election in 1860, Southern states began to secede, leading to the formation of the Confederacy. In February 1861, Jefferson Davis was elected as the president of the newly formed Confederacy, and delivered an inaugural speech that tried to justify the secession. On February 18, 1861, in Montgomery, Alabama, Davis proclaimed, "We have a right to secede, as we are a distinct people. We will not submit to oppression." This framed secession as a constitutional right. His message argued that the South had to preserve its way of life. After the Civil War had ended, the radical Reconstruction era began. As the issue of civil rights was still prominent, two figures arose as strong advocates: Thaddeus Stevens, a congressman in the House of Representatives, and Charles Sumner, senator of Massachusetts and abolitionist. On the floor of Congress, Thaddeus Stevens asserted, "There shall be no oppression of the weak and the downtrodden for the future, or if there shall be, it shall be fully and promptly punished." Similarly, Charles Sumner stated, "The time has come to demand in the name of humanity, in the name of justice, in the name of liberty, that the bonds of the slave be broken." Their speeches within Congress pushed to ensure the civil liberties and freedoms of all individuals. In addition to these efforts, Frederick Douglass delivered many speeches during Reconstruction, demanding that African Americans to be fully integrated into society. In his 1866 speech at the National Equal Rights League's convention in D.C., Douglass declared, "The right to vote is the right of all men. The right to vote is essential to the protection of our rights." This reminded the people that freedom had just begun.